For the last couple of weeks, I've been experimenting with different high-protein creamy recipes. These are the top 3 recipes that are must-tries. Let's get into it. Before we go too far, let's discuss a couple of ground rules. The first one is going to be anytime that you're making a creamy, you should be making it well in advance. They do need to freeze for about 6 hours, potentially longer. If you read the booklet, it'll probably tell you about 24 hours, but I think you're okay if you freeze it for about 6 hours or so. Another ground rule is to make sure that after you take it out of the freezer, let it sit for about 2 or 3 minutes and then run it under hot water. This will keep the ice from sticking to the container that the creamy is in, and that'll allow it to be a little bit fuller and not have that icy taste around the edges. Also, a big shout out to Flexible Dieting Lifestyle. You've probably seen his shorts and videos. He does have a free PDF that you can go and download at his website, and it has a variety of different creamy recipes. And the base ingredients for these recipes were largely inspired by that PDF, so I want to make sure that I'm giving credit where it's due. If you're interested, definitely be sure to check him out. If you're watching this video, you've probably seen his content, but it's definitely worth the watch. Lastly, there are some base ingredients that essentially go with every single recipe. Unsweetened almond milk is going to be one of them, monk fruit sweetener will be another, vanilla extract, sugar-free Jell-O pudding packets, and xanthan gum. Now the sugar-free Jell-O pudding packets will be different flavors, so keep that in mind. They're going to change from recipe to recipe. However, in my opinion, they add a little bit more flavor if you're trying to capture vanilla or chocolate. They will also thicken up the ice cream, which is good, but the xanthan gum can do that on its own. So if you're not a fan of the Jell-O packets, you can always just exclude those. However, I definitely recommend it. Alright, with that said, let's go ahead and do recipe number 1. This is going to be peanut butter Oreo ice cream. If you've been watching my shorts for about the last month, you've probably seen me do a short on how to make this recipe, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth, and I'll have the ingredients on the screen, which is good for tracking purposes. For this recipe, we're going to need to get our dry ingredients into a creamy pint. That's going to be starting with 2 scoops or 62 grams of a peanut butter whey protein. I'm using Quest whey protein, but you can use whatever flavor you want. This is something that we had around the house for recipes like this. 5 grams of monk fruit sweetener, 8 grams of sugar-free cheesecake pudding, 5 grams of vanilla extract, and overall we're going to want to go ahead and dump our almond milk in. We're going to start with 480 milliliters of unsweetened almond milk. Big disclaimer here, by the way, with all of these recipes, keep in mind that almond milk is one of the worst milks you can use for this ice cream. Now don't get me wrong, it'll taste fine, but whole milk or fattier milks will create a creamier ice cream base. So whenever you're doing your spinning or mixing for the actual creamy itself, it might not take the first time and you might have to respin it 1 or 2 more times. However, if you're conscious of your calories, then having unsweetened almond milk, in my opinion, is the best route because that's going to be the lowest calorie milk that you can have. And it sits about 30 calories per 1 serving, which is about 240 milliliters. Once all of your ingredients are inside of the pint, you're going to take a mixer. I have a little hand mixer, but you can use any kind of mixer, or you can put this into a shaker bottle that you would typically make a protein shake in. It's up to you, but mix that until it's nice and thick and all of the ingredients have binded together. It should have a nice smooth texture. We'll freeze that and put it into the freezer, as I mentioned before, for a minimum of 6 hours, but typically the best option is to prep it the night before. This is just easier in my opinion, but do what you're going to do. Now that our ice cream is nice and frozen, we're going to run it under hot water and put it on the light ice cream setting. As I mentioned previously, this is almond milk, so if you need to, go ahead and remix it until it's a nice creamy texture, like the one you see here. And dig a little ditch into the middle of it so we can put our add-ins into the middle. For this creamy, we're using Oreo Thins. This is a slightly lower calorie version of Oreos, but it's really good for ice creams like this because the stuffing in the middle doesn't really stand out from a flavor perspective. What you really want is that cookie. So go ahead and crush up your cookie and dig that ditch in the middle. We're going to drop our Oreos into the middle of the ditch And then we're gonna put it back into the CREAMi and put it on the mix-in setting. Now I used 4 Oreos here, that's 1 full serving at about 140 calories. However, I did save 1 Oreo roughly to top off my CREAMi with, so I could take a thumbnail picture. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and just mix all 4 into the middle, and it'll be a little bit fuller from a mix-in standpoint. This recipe is really simple, and I think it's more universal. A lot of people are more interested in the peanut butter Oreo flavor. It's basically a cookies and cream, but the peanut butter does kind of differentiate it a little bit. And who doesn't love a delicious chocolate Oreo? Speaking of chocolate, our next recipe is going to be a double chocolate chip ice cream. For that recipe, we're going to make a few swaps. The first one is going to be the whey protein. We're going to swap that out with a chocolate flavored whey. We'll also be swapping out the cheesecake pudding mix for a chocolate pudding mix. And I'll be swapping out the Oreos for some chocolate chips. Although I'm not gonna lie, some Oreos in there instead of chocolate chips would be amazing. And lastly, I'm going to be including some cacao powder. This is really gonna help with getting that rich chocolate flavor for the ice cream. As far as our measurements go, we're gonna be looking at 2 scoops or about 62 grams of your chocolate whey protein of choice, 1 gram of xanthan gum, 5 grams of our monk fruit sweetener, 8 grams of our chocolate jello pudding, 5 grams of cacao powder, 5 grams of vanilla extract, unless you're me and you spill it over and it's really like 10. And then we'll have our almond milk, and that's gonna start off with 480 milliliters of almond milk. One note for this as well is to make sure that you understand that if you need to remix the ice cream, you might have to add a tiny bit of almond milk. Typically, the sweet spot for these recipes, in my experience, has been about 30 milliliters. Once again, we're gonna go ahead and put that onto our light ice cream setting and let that mix. And if you need to remix it, go ahead and remix it. Make sure you add a little bit of additional almond milk. And now that it's done, we're gonna go ahead and dig a ditch into the middle. We're gonna add our chocolate chips and put it back into the CREAMi for the mix-in setting, and it should only take about 2 minutes, and you'll have a nice chocolate product like this. And as you can see, we've got the double chocolate chip here. It's a super smooth, super delicious recipe, and it's a steady, easy one that also has that universal appeal. Double chocolate chip is of course a classic, but it's also nice to mix it up, and that's why I started working on the Cinnamon Toast Crunch CREAMi, which has become one of my favorite recipes. For this recipe, we're going to be doing 5 grams of monk fruit sweetener, 8 grams of a vanilla pudding packet, 1 gram of xanthan gum, 5 grams of a vanilla extract, a full Premier Protein cinnamon bun flavored protein shake. However, if you wanted to, you could just mix in some cinnamon flavored whey. That's perfectly fine as well. But since I'm keeping this one a little bit lower calorie, I would recommend doing 1 scoop, and that'll be closer to the macros on this. Since we are also using a protein shake here, we're gonna go ahead and make up the difference with the almond milk. So you'll add almond milk to this, but let's say you only get 330 milliliters of the protein shake into the cup. You'll add an additional 150 milliliters of almond milk. Once again, we'll go ahead and mix this up, freeze it overnight, and then add it to our CREAMi on the light ice cream setting. This recipe was a little bit more stubborn, and I did have to mix it a couple of more times if I'm being honest. So I had to add closer to 50, maybe even 60 milliliters of almond milk when it was said and done. However, I think it turned out pretty well. Once that's done, we'll go ahead and dig our ditch in the middle and add Catalina Crunch Cinnamon Toast flavor. This is one of the better tasting versions of the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It's got a little bit more fiber and a little bit more protein, so it's going to be a higher protein recipe, and of course there's going to be plenty of volume and all of that good stuff as well. Add that to your CREAMi and put it on the mix-in setting, and you should have yourself a nice Cinnamon Toast Crunch CREAMi. I did add some on top to make sure that the thumbnail also looked good. If you make any of these recipes, be sure to let me know down below. I've got to be honest, these have been absolute game changers. I eat them pretty much whenever I'm done with the workout at the end of the day, and it's just something that I feel like I get to look forward to, that I can kind of reward myself with, but not feel any kind of guilty way about it. They taste good, and they're full of protein, it's a ton of volume, and none of these recipes exceed 500 calories. And if you noticed by the screenshots on this video, they actually get lower in calorie as you get deeper into this video. You can also tailor them to some extent. Like I said in the last recipe, you can use 1 scoop of whey and fill in with 480 milliliters of almond milk. However, I don't know that it's going to make a substantial difference when it comes to the calories. But it might be a taste preference, and of course, if that's the case, definitely do so. Anyways, if you made it this far in the video, know that I appreciate you. If you enjoyed today's content, don't stop now. There's a video for you to click on the screen. And until next time, keep it together.